First off, everyone needs to listen to your podcast. I think you guys are probably my most favorite industry podcast out there because you guys really teach actors how to actually be entrepreneurs, how to actually market themselves. So I also do feel like every actor should think of themselves as a business person.
Oh, my cock. Anyway, I've lost 10 pounds.
Amazing. How are you doing it?
Only 100 more to go.
How are you doing it?
Well, I've been working out, I've been biking, I've been eating a little. You know what it just comes down to? It comes down to fucking cooking. I mean, it comes down to meal prep, doesn't it? It comes down to making food that you enjoy, that's like not unhealthy, but like
It also, I don't know, for you, saves you so much money.
It does. I mean, like, the thing is I like my meat, as you know. So it's like, it's hard for me to do a meal without meat, so that can get expensive. But is your subtitle in this really The King? I thought that was something Courtney did.
No, I did it yesterday when we were recording, and it must have just stayed that way.
So what's mine gonna say?
The Jester?
The Pig. I don't know. Anyway.
No. Yeah. Well. The issue that, I mean, it's not a bad issue to have with meat, but I just eat the good meat because you don't want to be ingesting like that white styrofoam shit.
What do you mean the white styrofoam shit?
The cheapest meat on the counter.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I thought you were going to say something about red meat.
No. All I'm saying is, like, I actually do think...
You sound like RFK. Be careful.
No. But you there's so much... I mean, what they put in meat is crazy. And it's... But here's what I'm saying. Because I also, though, notice... I'm not sure if you noticed this. If I don't get good chicken, it's disgusting to me.
Yeah, I don't fuck with chicken often for that reason. Number one, if it's not good, per your point, it's like gross. And number two, it's like it's actually.
But the same thing is true for beef.
Yeah.
Like I mean, live your life. All I'm saying is, like, don't get the $4.99 a pound of beef.
Okay, girl. What are we talking about today?
Well, I think we've inadvertently been talking about this for a long time. Well, I love this topic. So, and I'm gonna give context for this by way of going back to the beginning of, and you've heard me say this many times, and maybe people here have even heard me say this. First of all, one time, someone a mentor of mine, who we all know, said to me,
molested you,
that communicating and managing expectations solves most problems. And it's really always really stayed. It's like what we were saying yesterday. It really is true to me because hear me out. Even if someone is disappointed, and this is where I always think about this. If someone is disappointed by I can't do that or whatever, just talking about interpersonally, it's still better that you've communicated it than not communicating the potential disappointment that is coming. And so how does it relate to us? Well, the working title as of now, who knows if this will be the title when it's released, is Your Creative Career Isn't Broken, Your Expectations Might Be. And it's because we are positing in today's episode, or exploring the idea that for most people, their careers are stuck because they're waiting for, having expected either from the beginning or still expecting an outcome that's unlikely. And therefore, because of the assumed lack of communication with ourselves and managing of our own expectations, we find ourselves in complete limbo. So that's what today's
Sure.
episode's about.
Yeah, I mean, where it comes from for me is, you've often used this in context with, when we work with people and we look at their goals,
Right.
and it's like, well, what did you, people who've come to us because maybe they're not where they want to be, or they know they can have or do more, whatever. And the questions that you've always wanted to ask these people is like, what did you think was going to happen? Did it meet your
Right.
expectations? Did it not
Exactly.
meet your expectations? And so I think an important framework as we talk about expectations, and before we recorded, you were saying like this encompasses a lot of things, but like when I think about career expectations and your career being quote broken or whatever, which we should talk about what that means, is that I think it's that you said it, you have an idea of an outcome. So you have a point, D in mind, and you are not thinking through or confused or not really dealing with what's between A and D. And you're not actually kind of dealing with the reality to go, well, I expect this to happen, and what will it actually take for that to happen? Like for me, that's a lot of where it's a leap of faith. An expectation of a result is a leap of faith, and
Yeah.
I think including myself, what's difficult for us to do, and we'll talk more about this because I think this is really important, is the reality of that result coming true based off of the work you are outputting, or not even just the work you're outputting, the strategies you're taking, like and the reality of life. Like, is that assumption you're making about a result actually realistic based off of variables? But yeah.
Well, and just to say, one of the things that I don't really have the right words for, but that we talk a lot about and relates to this, and have actually once again, but just offline, meaning not on this cast, I've been talking so much about, has been to your point about what it's going to take to move something
Right.
along. Also, then butts up against the idea that, well, what about the magic? And the magic of our art, the magic, because sometimes all the strategies that are supplemental, I think for a lot of people, feel like they either deaden or cheapen the art. And so I'm bringing this up in relation because at some point in this conversation, I do want to talk about why sometimes managing expectations is tough from a motivational standpoint.
Yeah, and let me just be really clear about an example of that, right? It's like about what you're talking about, which is like, I expect to be on Broadway, okay? But I'm not willing because it feels like I'm cheating, or it feels like it's false, or it feels icky, or it feels like I'm whatever. I'm not willing to cultivate the art directors, composers, librettists, whatever, casting people. I'm not willing to do that work because it feels false and fake and inauthentic. But somehow I am expecting to be to go on Broadway. And by the way, and what's sort of where you don't get off the hook with this is like, okay, well, if that feels inauthentic to you, you need to figure out another way how you're going to get there. Then if you refuse to sort of like network with gatekeepers, then you have to go, no problem, how else is this going to happen, as opposed to I what I do think is true is that there's like an expectation, well, if I just manifest it, or I put myself in enough situations or rooms or whatever the fuck it is, like something will click. And I think that this is a big thing for you is, and we'll get to this, and we should talk about this first point, is like, you assume, I think what makes you you know, very effective, but also, you know, it's you know, why you intimidate people is because I think low key you believe anything is possible, but you don't have expectations of something working.
Well, bless
Excuse me.
you. I think what you're trying, just to clarify, I think anything is possible, but I don't have expectations that it's going to be handed to me.
Right.
I
Well,
mean,
you don't have expectations that like, oh, it's just gonna happen or this will
right.
just work
And
out.
in fact, I think maybe to my own detriment, I assume it won't.
Right. So that
Do you know what I
causes you
mean?
to plan and prep and think of, you know, a sort of every angle.
Contingencies.
Exactly. But let's talk about this. So, you know, we're saying this is in the context of, you know, why would people need to do this? You know, you said, you know, if your creative career may not be broken, your expectations may be broken. So, you know, why would what at what point would it be valuable for somebody to look at their expectations? And you're saying it's like if their career is broken, although it could be at other times as well. Well, how do we define, you know, when you say stuck, when you say whatever, what do we mean by your career being stuck?
I mean, obviously, I think it's going to look different for everybody, but I think for some people, it could feel that way if they're feeling completely unmotivated, getting up every single day and being like, I don't, I don't have the inspiration to do anything, which we hear and we know. I mean, I think it feel something's jammed, right? You know, and if I may, you know, well, you've been very open on the podcast recently, so you'll speak to whatever you want to. But I think that sometimes, in my experience of that piece of this, people are actually coming to terms with like, oh, well, what's my work gonna be then? Because I was essentially inspired by the dream, and now that's been taken away from me. I think similarly, and it relates to this, there's just a lack of sometimes a sense of like not knowing what to do. That's a sense when someone's career might feel broken. I don't know what to do. I'm just at, you know, in this holding pattern. I think that's a sign that something's awry. I do think financially, you know, I'm pausing because it's hard for me to synonymize. As you know, I'm not a big believer in someone's entire creative career being the financial, you know, and to be clear, because I think we should actually start to clarify this language. Someone's entire freelance, independent acting career or painting career or dancing career to be the sole provider for their life. So if that's an example,
Being employed by someone for their art.
sure,
Yeah.
exactly. That's an example where it's broken. I also, or could have a sense of broken. I also do think like if you're questioning yourself, and I like I told you I want to do an episode on someone's belief in their self, and that and mixed with faith. You know, that to me is, and I think this is super common. I mean,
Yeah.
for you, because like you know, we always boldly talk about how talented we are on this podcast, but it's because I think we know what worth. But have there not been moments when you've been like, well, is there something wrong with me? Am I secretly not very good?
This is an interesting one. And by the way, what we're saying is these are all moments that may inspire. There could be a million ways to address these issues that we're talking about, but we're saying, what would it mean? You know, these are, you know, looking at your expectations may be one. So am I untalented? Why don't people see it? Absolutely. This is something that I feel sometimes a lot. And you know, so what if I were to, so basically what the exercise is you're suggesting is if I feel that way, well, let me look at my expectations, right? So I'm feeling untalented. I'm feeling like I'm not being recognized for my bold talent. Okay. well, looking at my expectations as a framework for this, I may go, well, why would I expect anyone, and this is all often where I come, it's like, why would I expect anyone to just see my talent? What do I mean by that? Talent's subjective. And, it's funny, we were interviewing, we were talking with Courtney Romano yesterday for her podcast, and she talked about context, right? If you put somebody, there are plenty of actors, one you were just speaking about before we recorded, who you worked with recently. I'm talking about.
What was the?
We were talking about We Audition. And an actor you worked with recently.
Oh, yes.
So this is this is an actor who's been on Broadway and very acclaimed, and it was a great performance. Saw the performance. But if that was in a basement in the East Village, would it have been
actually, you're not even talking. Oh, no, finish your thought. I don't want to go finish your thought.
No, but
basement in the East Village.
I'm expecting my talent to be enough. And I'm not dealing with the fact that the context in which my art is presented, whether it be on Broadway, whether it be across from another cool actor, whether it be whatever, that actually shapes how people perceive my talent. If Lincoln Center, if LCT3 employed me tomorrow in a show, that would give context for my work. People would go, oh, yeah.
Well, there's sort of two big things you're bringing up. Taking Courtney. Remember when Courtney was like, I actually don't know if either of you. I've never seen you guys work. We've known Courtney for years and years and years. And this is a great example where in that moment I was like, the fact that Courtney doesn't know if we're good actors is exactly a problem.
Right.
And even if Mike, even if it's simply, because I know it's a story that it's a problem and it's our responsibility. And I'll give you another quick example in relation to this expectation. So there's a show. I actually don't even mind saying it. I want to bleep it out, but just for full context, right? So I'm going to say someone casting and the show. So, I 100% should have been seen for. I mean, there's no questions asked. That's like, and it was like covers, by the way. I mean, it was like nothing, bullshit. And this casting office specifically, who wants nothing to do with me. And there's many shows that I'm in the pocket for. And when I was emailing with my team about it, one of my agents rightfully said something, and it relates to this. He's like, because they don't know me well enough, and I think, because I have a few kind of interesting, fancy credits, that they should just give me the time of day. When in fact, he says, well, do you have materials that are actually in the pocket for this world that you keep trying to get in for? And the truth is, I don't.
Yeah, that's a great.
And so do you know what it kind of in part comes back to? The reason why this is a helpful question for me is like, well, what are my expectations? I expect, because they know my name and because I've done a few Broadway shows, for them to go, well, he has to be great. Well,
yeah, it's a jump, right? It's like what I think is interesting about an expectation that's mismanaged is it's a jump you're making. And so, not to put the cart before the horse here, the reason why that could lead to a career that's stalled out, a career that's uninspired, a career that's lacking clarity. You have this thing here, no movement or traction. I'll give an example. It's like I rarely pitch myself for projects anymore, even though, to be clear, 1 out of 4 projects I pitch for, I normally get seen for. And I, I've been working for 2 years.
I know you can't. You're not allowed to bemoan anymore. You know what? The community's decided, Mike. The community's rallied.
Yeah.
The community around you has decided. There's been conversations going on. You work more than anybody. You're literally at a play every other day. You have like 2 weeks off, and you pick back up. And And so you don't get to complain about not booking more. You book more than anybody.
But well, I don't know about that. But
I'm
but what
kidding.
I'll say is I what an assumption to make that I can just email a casting director and ask for an audition and they will give it to me. Like, that is such an assumption to make. Like, it's such a leap of faith, and that's why I kind of don't do it much anymore because I'm like, what am I expecting to come of this? And look, there's nothing wrong with just output, right? Just like, no expectation of an audition. But if I'm not willing to like foster a relationship, if they don't know my work, per your point, am I untalented? Why don't people see it? That you may not literally be acting enough. You may not be making enough. So your expectations are fucked because you're like, oh, I did something in, a basement in, Ridgewood, and, I'm not famous at this point. It's like, well, what do you expect? Nobody, if you're expecting to be employed by New York Theater Workshop or to be get an agent, they're not seeing that work. Other cool people are, but again, it's about looking at your expectations. I'm expecting to work at these kinds of places, and then you have to go, well, and I'm not being seen or not being recognized or not. Well, it's like, well, am I in situations where they're able to even see me, know who I am? So
Well,
again,
and again, there's so many factors, right? I mean, much to our chagrin, there's so many factors. Meaning, to your point, well, do I have any relationships there? Do I have any examples of my work? Do I have the background and experience to say that I'm actually ready to do such a thing? Do I there are so many factors, and this is where this is a blessing, if I may. Here's why this is a blessing. Because then, and maybe we should, we're going to get into this, so maybe we should hold off on all the reasons why about managing expectations. But just to say, in a macro sense, I think the thesis that we're kind of putting out there is that it actually allows you to simply have a realistic conversation, not only with what the circumstance is, but then what you can do.
Right.
That's the power of it. It's not just what are my expectations? Oh, those aren't met. It's what do I have the ability to do?
And I know you have this next point here about what expectations we had. I mean, we could talk about that, but I think that kind of organically leads to this next point.
Sure.
Which is, you wrote here, why do artists build such elaborate careers that they expect? Media success, stories called the cultural mythos of making it. And because one thing I want to point out really clearly that you're talking about here is this is very common. And look, when we have worked with artists, actors and whatever, well, that's probably the biggest issue we have is getting them, most people are not doing anything. They think they're doing things, but they're not doing anything. They're like, well, I have I email casting directors to let them know what I'm working on. It's like, and I did get new headshots. There's a major gap in strategies and different angles, back alleyways, and just resourcefulness. It's like I do two things. Like I go to pay to plays, I email agents and casting to let them know what I'm working on, and I get new headshots. Like those are like it. And I submit on Actors Access and Backstage all day. It's like, and so what I want to point out here about this, and I want to see if I can formulate this thought, is these expectations of like a creative career, like, me being a working actor, is just like a given. It's almost like a given. And it's like, and I think it comes from, or like, it's not that hard to be a big star. It's like, or anybody can do it. I think,
and just to be clear, we just were watching a new docuseries last night called Social Studies, and it follows a bunch of kids in LA and screen recording their phone for a year, so they see everything on their phone and filming them in real time. And how this relates is we even more so are living in this moment where culturally you can break through the noise very quickly. And
Right.
the idea of social influence and media and fame and money, all those things are even more in front of us. So I say this because I actually, while might have once have been like, oh, I want to be this great artist and I want to, I actually feel like there's now even just more of a pressure to be a media success.
Known, and you have here, I wrote this actually, parents, and I extend this to anybody. If somebody's pursuing this as a career, I would assume somewhere along the way, whether it was their parents, whether it was a teacher, a mentor, whatever, somebody said to them, you could do this. Right. And you are special. You are that to somebody, for somebody to commit to this. I would imagine that 99% of people had one person in their life, go, you can do this, and you are
Yeah.
special and you are different.
Yeah.
And, and one thing I want to circle back to, or want to talk, is that what you were talking about, like the fame thing. I think, what was the fucking cool thing to say in college? It's like, well, I don't want to be famous. I just want to be, just do like
Right.
3
Exactly.
shows a year, or if I could just make a living in the
Exactly.
theater, that, and that's wrong. Like, I think number one, and especially not now, but there's an assumption that like, oh, just being, it's like fame is, stupid, but like, I'll just be a working actor. Like that's easy. Or like that's not an extraordinary feat to do 2 to 3 shows, like, and I'm
Unto
not talking about
itself.
like, in the basement. I'm talking about like shows that you get paid a living wage for, and are making enough to live. Like, you just assume, or like, oh, I don't even want to, just have cool reoccurring on this show. It's like we think that that's not a
Right.
big feat for some reason
Right.
because it's not Tom Cruise, but that is to work consistently as an actor is very difficult. I mean, if you just look at the equity, look at how many people qualify for equity health insurance at any given moment. It's like, and that will just prove the point. Or how many people qualify for SAG health insurance at any given moment, because that gives you a sense of how much they're actually earning and how much they're actually working. And it's like,
And so the point that you're really trying to make here is that managing the expectations of even the quote unquote simplest of careers
yeah,
is important, because that's ludicrous unto itself, especially in major markets. And listen folks, because it's going to relate to this. Of course there are going to be outliers. Of course there are going to be people whose careers are buoyed and slick. But what we are talking about, and what this podcast is all about, is the not the 2%.
right.
It's the 98% in a
The
lot of
reason
ways.
why, all of these assumptions, I think what it comes down to, and what I want to circle back to, I was trying to say at the top of this section, is that we assume that all of these things, I would argue, being known, even being famous or being a working artist, I think there is an assumption that it's easier than it is.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
that, and
I
nobody can
agree.
prepare you for that. But I think there is an assumption, especially when you enter the business, that it's going to be easier than it actually is. And so the
Yes.
reason why I bring this up is because if you came in with a clear, wide-eyed expectation of how actually difficult it was going to be, which I would argue you did to an extent, then guess what happens? You start to look at the real work it's going to take to get there. Whereas what most actors do, especially, is I think that they still think it's a bit easier than it actually is. So when they enter it, and so therefore they don't, we were talking about resourcefulness before, they don't actually ask themselves, what is it really going to take, because this is damn near impossible. So when they sit down and have that realistic, when they have that realistic expectation, they're actually able to be more resourceful. When they see how hard it's going to be, they can be more resourceful.
Yes. Well, actually, this relates to the point I was going to make. One of the things, you said that I was clear-eyed. I don't actually think I was. I want to be clear about what I mean, or where I think I got a little more clear-eyed. In running, and I always say it, but it relates to this. In running the theater company, and experiencing in real time how challenging that was, and then going, well, wait, aren't we trying to do the same thing, i.e., make art and grow an audience to share it with? Like, I mean, it's the same idea. And more specifically, I want to be doing that all the time as an independent artist too. So, what is the difference? And I know how difficult that was. What's my point? What is the point I'm trying to get at? You and I have been more and more talking about the realization that the hypothesis is coming true, the scope of what our careers it's going to take to make them happen is or even continue is becoming larger and larger, and needs to be considered through that lens. And I'm just underlining this point, Mike, because I don't think if I had necessarily had that experience, I think I would have always had the same ideas, but I don't think I would have had enough real life experience.
I think that probably what the theater company did was, and look, I want to talk about, that's an example where maybe ignorance is bliss. But when you're running the company and you're seeing what it actually really takes to run a company, and you're seeing what it actually takes to do it, then your expectations are a little more right. Your assumptions about what it actually takes are a little bit more in line. They're a little more accurate, right? And like I'm saying,
exactly.
I think that the fact that, I talk to people, because I've suggested, I have a breakdowns connection, and I have like a couple of actor friends I've like told them about, just saying like, hey, if you ever, but it's amazing how many people don't know what that is. And that's shocking to me, that they don't know about Breakdowns Express. You expect, but that's the thing, right? Is that because they have an assumption that I'm going to get a job realistically from Backstage, Actors Access, and my agent submitting me for parts that thousands of that is their expectation. They're not even considering, oh, what if I had an agent's login or had access to that? They're not even making that jump. They're not even making that jump because their expectations are fucked. They really expect that they're going to book a Broadway show from their agents getting them into a room from fucking Backstage or Actors Access. People really think that that's going to happen.
Hey, you guys, Mike here. I know, jump scare. That was a segment from our latest episode of Creative Risk. And this episode, the full episode, exclusively lives on our Patreon. So if you enjoyed what you've heard so far and you want to dive deeper, consider joining the Patreon community of Creative Risk. We offer 3 membership tiers starting at just $5. As a member, you'll get access to ad-free episodes, weekly motivational content, bonus full-length episodes, and much more, including a book club. Come on. But it's more than just content. Really, you'll be a part of a community that's dedicated to accountability and support, helping you stay motivated and inspired. So just head over to our Patreon, Creative Risk Podcast, patreon.com/Creative Risk Podcast. It's in the episode description as well. And sign up today, you guys. Hope to see you in our community.